This is the Carolina Business Leadership Show. Real conversations, real leaders, and real lessons from business owners across North and South Carolina. I'm Carol Willard, and every week we'll sit down with entrepreneurs and leaders who are building, growing, and navigating the realities of businesses in the Carolinas. If you care about leadership, growth, and doing business the right way, you're in the right place. Well, today I'm joined by Amy Leah, a seasoned real estate professional with over 3 decades of career in luxury real estate with Sotheby's International Realty. Amy has built her reputation on organization, trust, and authentic client relationships. Based in Beaufort, South Carolina, she now specializes in helping clients, many of them downsizers, navigate major life transitions with clarity and care. Amy, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Sales, nonprofit, leadership, and luxury real estate. Which chapter shaped your approach to clients the most, and how does that show up in day-to-day for you?
The one that made the most impact was probably the leadership of the nonprofit for 15 years. And I say that because I had to wear so many hats. And I think in real estate, it's the same thing, whether you're working with a buyer or a seller or a home inspector or a lender, you've got to wear a lot of hats. And with leading that nonprofit, not only did I have to play several roles and judge how to interact with different audiences, it was also a chance to fine tune skills with organization and negotiation. And you definitely have got to have a strong background with those things or develop one when you're in real estate in order to consistently perform at the highest that you can do on a consistent basis. You've got to be able to play all those skills at once. When I was with my dad for years in construction, I was able to learn so much through the eyes of the new construction or renovation side of things, so that when I am working with a buyer who's looking at a house to buy, whether it's new construction or not, I've got a totally different lens than a lot of real estate agents who never worked in that field. And so that has always been a benefit that I love, being able to pull out of my back pocket when I need to. As far as sales go, I worked with Xerox right out of college. And one of the things I admired so much about that experience was that they do a 2-week training program up in Leesburg, Virginia, or they did back in the 1980s. And one of the things that was a big takeaway for me was the first week they taught you how to sell anything but a copier. And it was all about sales of anything from ironing boards to airplanes. And the method that they taught us was one you could take to use in any sales job. And it was really key that they made a big statement in that first week of how important it is to be a good salesperson and be authentic and gain their trust and make yourself a knowledgeable expert. And then that second week was learning about every single other copier out there and ours and how ours was better. So that helped a lot. As far as that last category of luxury, the luxury market that I'm in, I will say every client, buyer or seller, deserves your best, of course. But what I have found, and I say this as it relates also to my experience with nonprofit fundraising, people that I'm getting a $5,000 check from for fundraising versus people that are writing me $500,000 with a whole lot more zeros behind that five. They are still humans that put their pants on the same every morning, but the way they want to be listened to and respected, they don't want a car salesman. They want someone who they thinks the way they do. And that is something that you definitely don't learn overnight. So I think, again, that experience for me in fundraising helped me a lot with the occasions where I work with people buying a $1 or $2 or $3 million home. They are used to being spoken to differently, listened to differently, and it's hard for me to put my finger on it. But it's definitely something I think most people would agree with in real estate in the higher numbers.
Yeah. With you running a nonprofit for 15 years, what leadership habits from that world still give you an edge in real estate?
Yes, just like the note that I just made about the way that they want to be talked to and understood. Leadership also a lot of times has to do with being able to be strong enough to not say yes to everything. And sometimes luxury real estate clients are used to not hearing the word no. And there is a way to get around that, but you have to understand how to use your answers to be able to get the information across you need to do and still explain things the way they need to be explained without using the word no. So a lot of good tips from fundraising have definitely parlayed over into luxury real estate client transactions.
Knowing how to say no without actually saying the word no is an incredible gift, in my opinion.
It goes so
So, what drew you to Beaufort and what feels uniquely low country about how business gets done in the Beaufort area?
I'll start with that and then tell you why I was drawn here. But it does come up on a weekly basis that when I was drawn to the low country, little did I know it's really the slow country. People just they're not in a hurry to return your phone call or to get that document over to you. It is something that I have learned that my patience had to be practiced until it became far more comfortable to slow myself down. And yet I am very quick to continue to respond to all the things that are asked of me because I like to respond quickly. But just because I like it that way, I have learned to respect that other people don't necessarily want to be in a hurry, and that is okay. I've come to terms with that. And it works. It really does. And I do feel like I don't know what my blood pressure was in Atlanta, but I'll bet you it's lower here. So what drew us to Beaufort was we wanted to go to the coast, not necessarily be on the ocean, but very much closer to the coast than Atlanta. And we wanted to go no further north than Beaufort and no further south than Ponte Vedra, mostly based on climate, annual temperature ranges. We didn't want cold winters. We didn't want hot, buggy, humid, sticky summers that are in places where you don't really see a seasonal change. We wanted seasonal changes without having to deal with the hot, hot or the cold, cold. Beaufort surprised us. We had been through Beaufort on the way to Fripp Island and Hilton Head and places where it was a neat stop along the way. So we knew no one when we decided to move here, but it was primarily because just the random people we met during the time that we were here exploring the area. All kinds of people, from restaurant servers to people on the street when we were shopping and window shopping to people on the beach when we were just taking a walk. Everybody was so friendly. And that appealed a great deal because as much as Atlanta is a great melting pot and a lot of people think that the Southerners are great, more so than people who react badly to cold New Yorkers, it was definitely different from Atlanta. It's just really sweet, old time without the town being too small. I was worried about that. And there's plenty to do, lots of people to meet, plenty of fun to be had. And I was even surprised at the number of great restaurants here. And there's not a whole lot of shopping here, but I'm not a big shopper, so that's okay.
There's a lot of shopping to be done online if you ever get that urge. And
Yeah.
it's not.
Amazon Prime is in my phone.
I think that's most Americans nowadays.
Me too.
So when you think about relationship currency, what are the little rituals that build trust before, during, and after a transaction with your client?
I'd say some of the things that I particularly lean on in trying to develop that trust in such a confidential relationship. Love being able to provide inside scoop. And I use those words with my clients, whether they are buyers or sellers. If they're buyers, I like to give the inside scoop of, okay, here's the history of this house. Here's what it sold for last time. Here's how much they've done to it. Here's how the market value is, according to Zillow, who more times than not is wrong. So I always throw Zillow in there because everybody looks at Zillow. But I also back it up with my own comps and other indicators, especially because Zillow can't tell you if this four-sided brick house has a gorgeous neighborhood around it or it's the best house on the street. They don't have a way of knowing that. So inside scoop, especially for out-of-towners that are new to Beaufort like me, inside scoop is great. And outside of the house itself, whether it's a listing or I'm helping a buyer, it's all about the different neighborhoods and the different activities. And when you start looking at someone who, whether they are a local and they're moving from one neighborhood to another neighborhood, they want to know more about that neighborhood if they don't already. But a lot of my buyers are moving here from nearby cities or out of state, other states. And so they lean more heavily on me to tell them, especially if the husband's a golfer, what are the differences between these 8 golf course communities that are all around Beaufort? And it's fun for me to be able to say, okay, well, what you really want to know is, and be able to give them that input that sounds like it's a secret that I'm letting them in on. So that helps a lot. pricing strategy, like I say, about giving the history of the house, things that I can find out more about than they can most of the time. And even post sale, the solutions that come up that I can come up with for issues they have, whether it's, do you have thoughts on someone to take care of the yard? Because I don't really think that the person who was doing it before did a good job. Or I need these 2 dead trees or half dead trees removed, and they're a dozen tree companies. Which one do you recommend? And I have a reason why I recommend the ones I do. And they're no cheap bets. It's because I've worked with them. And a lot of times, if I've used them on my own house, especially painters or plumbers or electricians, I'll tell them these are the people I use personally on my house. And that does make them feel like, okay, she's not just pulling it out of the yellow pages. So
Yeah.
those little things.
I feel like those relationships are so important, even outside of real estate, like knowing who your plumber is, knowing who your painter is, because nobody wants the same color walls for 30 years. Maybe they do, but I wouldn't recommend it. So it is great that like having those relationships so that you can refer your clients to them and know who your clients are doing business with at the end of the day. That is definitely a leg up.
Definitely.
So tell me about a moment where you're going and you're putting in that like extra 5% change the outcome for the client.
I always go the extra mile. So I can't think of one example where it changed an outcome other than just the fact that most of the referrals I get from my clients to friends of theirs typically comes along with the comment that Amy goes the extra mile. She exceeds expectations. She exceeded ours. So it's funny because when I look at other agent testimonials, because we all like to check out the competition, and I rarely find testimonials on other agents that include that kind of comment of how that agent exceeded our expectation. There are a lot of great things they say, but that's typically not one of the ones. So going that extra mile does lead to an impression that you have exceeded expectations, and I like that. It's a good thing.
So you serve a lot of downsizers. What do they really value quietly in an agent that isn't in one of like the glossy brochures that's just gonna make it look like all rainbows and butterflies?
I would say, since a lot of my clients are downsizing because they are seniors and they're either going to downsize to age at home or downsize because they're going to have a lot more travel ahead of them as they retire. But primarily, I believe that my demeanor is what is different than the glossy. I do the glossy, but if I'm listing their house, we have a beautiful 4-page Sotheby's glossy piece of material that everybody loves. But my demeanor is very calm and calming. My professional knowledge about each aspect of the process from start to finish, they can appreciate, they see it, they can touch it, they can feel it. It is very obvious that I am coming at this with a calm professional manner. And it doesn't mean that I'm giving up any degree of enthusiasm, but I think that the older people get, and that's why I say downsizing is typically my older clients, the older they get, the more they appreciate not having an actor in front of them, somebody who's trying to just say what they think they want to hear, but more so someone they can relate to. And also with older people in general, they have less filter. And I think my patience, as far as my demeanor, including patience, my patience of letting them ramble on and potentially say things that other people might find rude or offensive, I just kind of giggle. I think it's just part of accepting people who have been there, done that, and they expect to be able to say what they want to say and be heard. And I don't find that to be quite the same with younger clients. So it's a different audience for sure.
So your price point is sometimes a million plus. How does your marketing mix differ at that level? And what channels do you actually use to move the needle?
So I would say that probably the majority of my listings are a million plus. And so it doesn't mean I don't take less, because I do. But I will say in the lower price range, whatever that may be, I'm typically going to do a nice 1-page brochure with beautiful photographs and bullet points about the house, and maybe a 1-pager that lists features and improvements they've made since they owned it. Now, if I have a $2 million house, I'm going to do a glossy 4-page with a whole lot more photos, with a lot more content versus bullet points. And if a seller sees what I offer, especially if it's the 1-pager and they want more, they'll ask for more, I'll do more. But if it's up to me and they trust me to figure out the right kind of marketing for their house, that is typically the difference on the printed material. As far as where I market it, Every listing gets a lot of the local coverage, of course, but sometimes with the higher priced million plus, I'll make sure that I pay for one of our company ads in the New York Times, the Wall Street Mention Global. I'll do a potentially a half or full page in a splashy magazine. Not that those things actually lead to buyers, but your sellers appreciate it. And the higher the price point of the house, the more they do appreciate things that make them feel special by having their house in the New York Times. And like I say, I've not sold one yet that way, but it sure does look nice. So, marketing, a lot of it is making sure that it's not just a mass email to all the local agents, but to literally call the ones that you know deal in that price point often and be able to have a one-on-one conversation, direct me to them to ask, what do you think about this house? Do you have any buyers actually looking for waterfront, but they don't necessarily need a boat dock in place? I mean, there are a lot of specific angles I can take, and I'll do 20 of those phone calls and sometimes learn a lot out of being able to go back to my client and say, all right, here's the finger on the pulse. And so there are a lot of unique custom differences house to house, but in general, that would be my answer.
What does your weekly rhythm look like when you're juggling multiple listings, negotiating, and showing? Do you have any non-negotiables?
Well, daily rhythm for me starts with being able to look in the morning at appointments, obviously, but a quick rundown on any active listings I have. And after that, a quick rundown on any active buyers that are not just browsing, but are actively needing to find something now. So I always do a touch point on all of those names first thing in the morning so I can see if there's anything urgent that I need to prioritize before anything else, before I look at any other to-dos that day, because I have my own personal to-do list and I've got 4 grown kids and typically one of them's either getting married or graduating or something. So there are some other things that I have to do other than real estate, but I always prioritize first thing in the morning, my real estate, my clients, my buyers, my sellers. And I have a big dry erase board. I used to have a normal size one. Now I have a gigantor one because I like to visually see it all spread out. And while a lot of people can do that with an Excel spreadsheet on their computer laptop, it doesn't work for me. I have to have everything in a big spread out format. And that's not even my calendar, but so I do a combination of the dry erase board, my laptop, and I do have an Agent Planner Pro notebook. It sounds like I'm duplicating efforts, but I'm really not because I use those 3 tools for different reasons. And so my daily rhythm is a combination of using those 3 things. But that's why I'm really, really excited about trying to find an AI version of a CRM that will work best because I've tried different customer relation management CRMs. I've tried various ones over the years. Right now, I'm dabbling with Follow Up Boss, but there is the artificial intelligence part of that whole world that has been growing by leaps and bounds, going in different directions. And I'm working with a group right now that wants to perfect something they've been working on, which would be partnered with Follow Up Boss that lends more of not a voice activated lead call generation. I don't need that. I don't want that. But it's something where I can talk to my phone and say, enter this date into my calendar or remind me in 1 hour to call Joe Smith about. And all of these things that I can do while I'm driving or as I'm folding laundry. Or it's nice to not have to manually input every single thing that I think of as soon as I think of it.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that, making life a whole lot easier.
That sounds like an incredible tool. So how do you design your ops stack from transaction coordinator to checklist so nothing slips through the cracks?
That goes back to my combination of these 3 tools I use. In addition, I do have a transaction coordinator at our office in Charleston, and she is helpful for a lot of things, as in when I submit a binding contract. There are a lot of deadlines and there are a lot of signatures and initials to double check, triple check. She is very good at catching things I miss from that standpoint. It is up to me more so than her to remember when the expirations are on my listings, which I used to have a really hard time remembering those. And all of a sudden, they would show up the next morning expired. I'm like, oh no! So there are things that I still am responsible for that cannot be on the backs of a transaction coordinator. And they can get lost in the Agent Planner Pro workbook, or they might get smudged on the dry erase. So That's why I say this particular follow-up boss with the voice activated element, that is going to help me ensure that things don't fall through the cracks, because on rare occasions they are still doing that because I'm using kind of a three-pronged approach, which is not the most efficient way to do it or effective.
The NER changes created more paperwork and confusion for many people. What's your playbook for keeping clients calm and informed?
100%. It is doing a hard copy printout that I give them to go over with them and have them take away. That there are a couple of forms that Sotheby's helped kind of condense into a one pager on the changes as a result of the NAR settlement that affect a buyer, and a page on the changes and how they affect the seller. And to be able to have that in a one page format, condense, and be able to go over that and let them take it away so they don't have to say, well, I forgot what she said. So having them in hard copy is a huge help. Huge.
In a relationship driven business, what do you look for in great referral partners and how do you earn your trust over time?
So for me personally, most of my referral business is coming from Sotheby's agents in offices all over the country who have a client moving or retiring or relocating down to South Carolina. And that is the trust there, even though I've never met these people or spoken to them, is because we're all under the Sotheby's brand and we know what that means. We know that there's a expectation of excellence that we feel, those of us who work with Sotheby's feel like it's cream of the crop. And we feel that way for a lot of reasons. So even though I've never met, Alice in New York, and she calls me and says, I'm going to send this person to you, but I want you to take good care of them. It's easy for both of us to feel as though that's a no brainer. And so there's that type of referral trust. The second kind is friend referrals here or from Atlanta, where I was for a long time, people that I knew well there. So people that know me versus someone who doesn't. And those people that know me and people that are not part of Sotheby's or my friends or my family or my folks here that are watching me do business and seeing my signs up. It's because even though they see lots of other people's signs, they know me as a person. They know how fastidious I can be, how quickly I follow up on social plans. So when they see how well I'm doing with clients who are giving me these big shout outs, it's a lot less effort to get referrals from people who can see you walk the walk and talk the talk and know that you are making your clients happy. And they know that they enjoy spending time with me and that sometimes I'm actually funny, and on top of being organized and successful, I'm funny. And that goes a long way when you want to enjoy working with someone for several months versus just talking to the school librarian. You don't, you want to enjoy the person you're talking to. So yeah.
Do you have like lenders or stagers that you work with on a regular basis or that you refer your clients to before starting that home buying process?
Usually not before, but during. So I do have a couple lenders that I use, definitely a couple of my favorite closing attorneys that I will recommend. Closing attorneys more so than lenders because most of my buyers are cash buyers and my sellers don't need loans. So of the lenders, I do have a couple that I do refer. It's just, it didn't happen that often. I did personally get a HELOC on my house. And so I used one of the ones that I had referred business to and said, hey, by the way, how about me? Can I get a refinance on my house? And as the closing attorneys, that is, to me, that is a really careful decision that I think every client should make. And in Atlanta, there was always one closing attorney for both sides, where that's totally different in South Carolina, where a buyer has a buyer closing attorney and a seller has a seller closing attorney, and they're completely different. They can be the same law firm, but a lot of times they're not. And I found that to be a really interesting change from Atlanta, is having two closing attorneys for every transaction. But yes, in fact, one of those closing attorneys referred to me a few months ago, and a phenomenal client who's a widow whose husband had passed, and she had several different parcels of property. And he told her, you cannot go wrong. You've got to pick Amy. Amy is the one. So it helped a lot to know that I had sent him so many closings, but in the process of representing my clients on both sides, he gained an appreciation for me and for wanting to make sure that this sweet little old lady had someone in her corner that was going to protect her and help her and guide her and hold her hand. And that's what I did.
Those relationships are just so important. They make what we get to do every day across all industries, much more meaningful and easy. What local community causes or events energize you, and how do they weave back into your client relationships?
So since moving here, I've had a lot of new charitable causes to learn about, a lot of them having to do with sea life and fish types of causes and conservation. We had plenty of conservation, land conservation in Atlanta, but down here it's a completely different angle or perspective when you're talking about land conservation in the marshes. So I do like supporting things that are, in my opinion, critical to this whole area. Conserving the marshlands is a completely different reason than conserving forests in North Georgia, which they both have very valid causes and very valid purposes, but this one's a very different one. So I'm learning a lot about it. The way I like to tie it back into my real estate is when they have charitable cause events, and typically it's a dining event, whether it's an outside garden and gun looking theme or whether it's a taking over a restaurant and having different local chefs. I like to be able to invite my clients to come and cover their tickets and be able to do that for them as a sign of appreciation, typically past clients or clients I've been working on. But I do like being able to support that cause by also, again, providing a reason and an entertainment venue for us to kick back, relax, and talk about things other than work and other than real estate, but talk about that cause or talk about people we know or people we see that we run into there and introduce each other and broaden that circle and have it be a ripple effect. So it's fun to be able to support those things and make a bigger, deeper, richer relationship with my client.
I really love that you get to maintain those relationships past the transaction or the sale or the purchase, whatever that may be with those clients. That's really awesome that you do maintain those relationships. So if we made a Beaufort and Seas Island moving decisions guide, what 3 sections would you insist we include for buyers coming in from out of state?
I would start with, because you can come up with categories that you would put with any moving guide to any new place. But what I think might be unique city to city, town to town, would be their own local events. Not everybody has a shrimp festival, oyster festival. We have an international film festival here, and then there are international film festivals in other places. But what ties in so neatly with ours is always having a nod to people like Pat Conroy, who did so many novels, who based a lot of them here, or the movies like Forrest Gump and Prince of Tides. And there's always some tie in to those every time that international film festival comes around. But the water festival is huge here, and so many different festivals that are very, very hyper local here. I think it's good to have a list of your local events that are annual, that have developed a following. And secondly, especially as it relates to South Carolina, and I won't say only Beaufort, but I look at United Van Lines. They do an annual report for the calendar year each year, and they are nice enough to share the information that they gather because United Van Lines is the largest moving company in the country. And so they will, state by state, show a percentage of the moves that they did into that state versus out of the state. And for instance, for South Carolina, it was 69% of their moves were coming in and 39 going out, 31 were going out. So then it gives you the reasons why people are moving in. And the top 2 reasons were retirement and climate. And then I think it was lifestyle and family. With retirement being the number 1 reason, I look at a moving in guide and I think, maybe one of those mandatory categories is show me the hospital choices, and not just hospital, but the PT and OT. We have a thing called Boss Orthopedic, and they do a lot of PT and OT, and they have several different locations and really great services. So the hospital is important, and which hospitals and how close are they and how big are they? And, we have a huge, Beaufort Memorial is huge, but then not too far in Charleston is the USMC. So being able to outline specific to our location, the hospitals, the medical services, the OT, PT. And then I guess the last category would focus more on our best fun local restaurants, because every city, unless I would leave out chain restaurants because you already know what a chain restaurant is known for.
Right.
Any of the single proprietor restaurants and how broad that range is on the type of menu they have, what they're known for. Those things I would be most interested in wanting to know if I moved in. So maybe I'm basing it on a selfish point of view, but that's what I would do.
There are definitely some wonderful restaurants in Beaufort. I went to one down in Fripp Island for a bridal festival last year, and we stayed on Beaufort the night before and just drove to Fripp from the hotel. And of course, we were like, "Hey, where do we go eat? Where do they have fresh seafood?" And they were like, "There's this fish camp on Beaufort. You have to go there." And we went, and it was phenomenal.
Yes.
I love how fresh the food is down in your local restaurants in Beaufort.
Fish Camp and Marker 244 and Breakwater and Saltus and Old Bull Tavern. I mean, it just goes on and on. There's so many really great spots. So yeah, I agree. Fish Camp is wonderful.
Piggybacking off of like a moving decisions, if somebody is looking for like a downsizers checklist, what are the points that you would include on that checklist?
I would definitely zero in on once you figure out which neighborhood feels right to you, because I think that's such a personal choice. So, and it might be 2 or 3 neighborhoods, but let's just say you've got a neighborhood you're dealing with where you already like the look of the houses and the feel of it. And then the questions are, how walkable is it? Can you walk to the things you need, or is it strictly a driving neighborhood? That may have a lot to do when you're downsizing as to, do I really want to get in the car every time I have to go get something from the grocery store? Also, the ingress egress, is it on a busy street? Because again, a lot of the people I know downsizing are older people, and having to go in and out from a busy street doesn't seem to matter as much when you're younger as it does when you're older. And it just makes you a little more nervous. And so walkability factor within the neighborhood, even if it's not to go pick up anything, but just having a beautiful neighborhood to walk around in. And amenities. A lot of these neighborhoods don't have amenities, but a ton of them do. And some might just have 2 amenities and some might have 15. So that, and then also the house itself, is there a lot of yard to maintain, or is it a lock and leave? And lock and leave doesn't mean it has to be a townhouse or a condo. It can be a house with a xeriscape landscape where you don't have to do anything to it. Anyway, so that and the proximity to things that you like to do. So if you know you're going to be doing pickleball or golf, or where you're going to do these things, it's always nice to see how nearby are these things, or am I going to be going at least 30 minutes each way? So thinking ahead through all of that doesn't mean you don't get to be in your favorite neighborhood, but you've got to be realistic of what is a day in the life, a week in the life, a month in the life, me in this neighborhood. Second thing on downsize is closets. When they get ready to downsize, people typically look and see, well, this is how much furniture I have. And if I'm going from 5 bedrooms to 3, then there's 2 bedrooms full of furniture that I don't need. That makes sense to look at it that way. But what a lot of people don't realize are the sheer number of closets that are filled with linens or sleeping bags or past athletic activity equipment. I mean, having a real honest look at how much stuff you have behind closed doors when you start to downsize, and giving yourself plenty of runway on, okay, I'm not going to wait until 2 weeks before I move. I'm going to start right now. I'm going to start giving things to consignment or to the thrift shop or. And things in your garage. I mean, garages are notorious for having stacks and stacks of things. And when I moved from Atlanta, between closets and garage, I'm still wincing at how hard that was. It took forever. I don't know, downsize. Kitchen is a big deal because for some people, when they're downsizing, if they don't cook much and they're going to typically be going out to eat more because now the kids are gone, they don't have to cook meals anymore. Then if you have a house with a small kitchen or a galley kitchen, it's going to be great for just you and your spouse, or you by yourself or whatever, to just have a little kitchen. Because why do you need a big one if you're not cooking meals for the family anymore? Or if you just don't want to cook as much as you did? Or what if people that are retiring really want to get into kitchen? They want to start watching these TV cooking shows and they really want to get proficient at making sourdough from scratch or all kinds of different things, because there's a lot of satisfaction for a lot of people in cooking. So maybe you do want to avoid a galley kitchen and have a big kitchen, because if you entertain a lot, that's the other thing. Parties usually end up around the kitchen.
Yes, they do.
Especially in the beginning before you sit down. You want a big open kitchen. So look at real closely when you downsize at the kitchen, because it's typically in the center of the house, typically. If it's not, that's fine too. But you probably, if you're going to have people over, you probably want a more open kitchen than a tiny closed up kitchen. Or if you're always going to be traveling and lock and leave, you want a tiny kitchen so that your real estate is mostly a big, comfortable family room or great room, or the bedrooms are bigger. So all of those to keep in mind on downsizing, on where do you want your square footage to play out the most? And even if it's a deck, or if there's no deck, is there room for a deck? Do you want to even be outside? Do you hate bugs? Are you allergic to mosquitoes? Or do you really want to have that cup of coffee first thing in the morning outside, breathing in some fresh air? So look at the deck. Even if it's covered with, moss or cobwebs, that's fine. But just see, what is the outside living area? What does it look like? Or what is there an option for? Because a lot of people don't realize until later that, and I sure would have liked to have had a screened in porch or at least a room for a garden, because you never know what you're going to want to do down the road. And if there's no real room for a garden, then you start having to pull all that stuff inside and grow it on your kitchen counter. And that's not really.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate all the education that you gave us, and definitely some new things that I would not have thought about. Where can our listeners connect with you if they are looking to downsize into the Beaufort area?
They can either use my email, which is probably easier to find online, but the Sotheby's office that I am with is the Daniel Ravenel Sotheby's International Realty. But my email is Amy, AMY, at Daniel Ravenel. But if it's easier to even call me, that's probably the shortest thing to write down. And that would be 404, I still use my Atlanta 404, 2608.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I appreciate you being here with us on the Carolina Business Leadership Show. Go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if this episode helped you, share it with another business owner in your network. And if you're in the Carolinas and need guidance around health, life, or Medicare insurance, don't hesitate to reach out to Lifetime Insurance Agency. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.